The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside Oatman, Arizona territory, throwing Willa Sinclair against the wooden door with enough force to tear the delicate fabric of her traveling dress from shoulder to waist, exposing the simple chemise beneath, and leaving her gasping in shock and humiliation. "Out you go, miss," the driver called down, his voice devoid of sympathy as he tossed her single battered trunk to the dust below. "This is far as we go today." Willa clutched the torn fabric to her chest, her fingers trembling as she stepped down from the coach into the blazing August heat of 1882. The small mining town spread before her like something from a fevered dream, all wooden storefronts and dirt streets baking under the merciless sun. She had traveled over 2,000 miles from Philadelphia, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride placed by a Mr. Chester Walsh, a rancher who claimed to need a wife to help manage his home and perhaps, one day, to love. Now she stood in the middle of this strange town, her dress in tatters, dust covering every inch of her, and no idea which of the men watching from the boardwalks might be her intended husband. The stage driver had already climbed back onto his perch, ready to continue on, leaving her stranded with her trunk and her shame. "Wait," she called out, but the crack of his whip sent the horses forward, and within moments the coach disappeared in a cloud of dust down the road toward the next town. Willa stood alone, one hand holding the torn fabric of her dress, the other shielding her eyes from the sun. She had sold everything she owned to pay for this journey, to escape the suffocating life that awaited her in Philadelphia, where her stepmother had made it clear she was no longer welcome after her father's death. At 22 years old, she had gambled everything on the promise of a new life, a kind husband, and a home of her own. Now she wondered if she had made the gravest mistake of her life. A group of miners across the street began to laugh and point, and Willa felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the earth itself, rather than stand here as a spectacle for these rough men to gawk at. "You looking for someone, miss?" A weathered woman called from the doorway of what appeared to be a general store. Her voice was not unkind but cautious, as if help came at a price in this town. "Yes, I am looking for Mr. Chester Walsh. I am his intended bride. We have been corresponding for 3 months, and he was supposed to meet me here today." The woman's expression shifted to something that might have been pity. "Chester Walsh. He owns the Copper Creek Ranch about 5 miles north of town, but I have not seen him in town today." She paused, studying Willa's torn dress with concern. "You had some trouble on the road. The stagecoach hit something, I think. A rock or perhaps a hole in the road. I was thrown against the door and my dress caught on a nail." Willa's voice wavered despite her best efforts to sound composed. "This was my best traveling dress. I do not know what Mr. Walsh will think when he sees me like this." "Any decent man would think about your well-being first and your dress second," the woman said firmly. "Come inside out of the sun at least. You look ready to collapse." Willa gratefully accepted the invitation, dragging her trunk behind her into the blessed shade of the store. The interior was cluttered with goods of every description, from mining equipment to bolts of fabric, from sacks of flour to bottles of patent medicine. The woman introduced herself as Margaret Foster, wife of the store's owner, and offered Willa a dipper of cool water from a barrel near the counter. "Thank you," Willa said, drinking deeply. The water was tepid but felt like salvation on her parched throat. "I apologize for my appearance. This is not how I hope to arrive." "None of us arrive in this territory the way we hope," Margaret said with a slight smile. "I came here in 1878 thinking my husband had struck it rich in the silver mines. Turned out he had a claim that produced just enough to keep us eating but not enough to make us wealthy. But we made a life anyway. That is what folks do out here." Before Willa could respond, the door opened again, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, lean, and sun-bronzed, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of the summer sky she had just been standing under. He wore dusty trousers, a work shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a hat that had seen better days. A gun belt sat low on his hips, the leather worn smooth with use. "Afternoon, Margaret," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to fill the small space. "I am looking for a woman who was supposed to arrive on today's stage, Miss Willa Sinclair from Philadelphia. Chester asked me to meet her since he is dealing with a sick horse that could not wait." Willa's heart sank. So Mr. Walsh had not even thought enough of her arrival to come himself, but had sent a hired hand instead. Still, she straightened her shoulders and stepped forward, maintaining as much dignity as her torn dress would allow. "I am Willa Sinclair," she said, her chin lifted even as her hand clutched the torn fabric. "And you are?" The man's eyes found hers, then traveled slowly down to take in her disheveled state, the torn dress, the dust that covered her from head to toe. Willa braced herself for disappointment, disgust, or worse, pity. Instead, when his eyes returned to her face, they held something that looked almost like admiration. "I am Cole Whitmore," he said, removing his hat to reveal more of that dark, wavy hair. "I work the neighboring ranch to Chester's place. He asked me to collect you since he could not get away. And before you worry about what he might think when he sees you, let me say this. You are beautiful just as you are." The word struck Willa like a physical blow. In all her 22 years, through all the carefully orchestrated social events her father had forced her to attend before his death, through all the empty compliments from men who wanted her father's money or connections, no one had ever said anything to her that felt so genuine, so unvarnished, so absolutely true in its simplicity. "I beg your pardon," she managed to say, certain she had misheard. Cole stepped closer, his boots quiet on the wooden floor. "You heard me right, Miss Sinclair. You have traveled 2,000 miles to start a new life with a man you have never met. You have survived what looks like a rough journey, and you are standing here with your head high despite circumstances that would have sent most Eastern ladies into a fit of vapors. That torn dress does not change the fact that you have courage written all over you, and courage is beautiful. So yes, you are beautiful just as you are." Willa felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry, not here, not now, not in front of this stranger who had just said the kindest words anyone had spoken to her in the year since her father's death. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That is very kind of you to say, Mr. Whitmore. Just Cole, please. We do not stand much on formality out here." He turned to Margaret. "Do you have any ready-made dresses that might fit Miss Sinclair, something sturdy for ranch life?" "I do," Margaret said, already moving toward a corner of the store where several simple dresses hung on pegs. "I have a few that should work. This blue calico here would suit you, Miss Sinclair, and this brown cotton is very practical." "I am afraid I do not have much money," Willa admitted, embarrassment flooding through her. "I spent almost everything I had on the journey here. I have perhaps $3 remaining." "Do not worry about that," Cole said immediately. "Chester can settle up with Margaret later. Consider it a wedding gift from your neighbors." "I could not possibly accept," Willa protested. "I do not even know you, and you have already been so kind with your words. I cannot take charity as well." "It is not charity," Cole said, his blue eyes steady on hers. "It is how we do things out here. When someone arrives, we help them get settled. When someone falls on hard times, we lend a hand, because we all know that tomorrow we might be the ones needing help. That is how we survive in this territory. Margaret emerged with 2 dresses, both simple but well-made, in sturdy cotton that would withstand the harsh Arizona climate and the demands of ranch work. "There is a room in the back where you can change, Miss Sinclair. Take your time." Willa accepted the dresses gratefully and retreated to the small room Margaret indicated. It was barely more than a closet, with a cracked mirror on one wall and a few crates stacked in the corner. She peeled off the ruined traveling dress, wincing as she saw the full extent of the damage. The fabric was beyond repair, torn from shoulder to hip. The delicate silk and lace that had cost her a month's earnings from her work as a music teacher completely destroyed. She pulled on the blue calico dress, relieved to find that it fit reasonably well, if a bit loose in the waist and tight across the shoulders. It was nothing like the fashionable gowns she had worn in Philadelphia, with their bustles and elaborate trimmings, but it was clean, intact, and modest. That would have to be enough. When she emerged, Cole was waiting by the door, her trunk already hoisted onto his shoulder as if it weighed nothing. His eyes swept over her in the new dress, and he nodded approval. "Much better for where you are going," he said. "Ready to head out to Chester's place." "As ready as I will ever be," Willa replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Is it far?" "About 5 miles north of town. I have got my wagon just outside. The road is rough, but I will drive careful so you do not get bounced around too much." They stepped back out into the blazing heat, and Willa saw a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses standing in the shade of the building next door. Cole loaded her trunk into the back, then helped her up onto the seat with a hand that was calloused but gentle. He climbed up beside her, took the reins, and clicked his tongue to get the horses moving. As they left Oatman behind, heading north along a dusty track that wound between rocky hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional hardy tree, Willa found herself studying her companion from the corner of her eye. Cole Whitmore was probably in his late 20s, she judged, with the weathered look of a man who spent his life outdoors. His hands on the reins were sure and steady, and he sat the wagon seat with the easy grace of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. "How long have you known Mr. Walsh?" she asked, desperate to fill the silence with something other than the rattle of wheels and the clip-clop of hooves. "Chester. About 4 years now. I bought the ranch next to his when I came to the territory in 1878. We help each other out during branding season and round up. He is a good neighbor, steady and reliable." "What is he like? As a person, I mean?" Willa twisted her hands in her lap, the question that had been haunting her for 3 months finally voiced. "His letters were always proper, but they told me little about who he truly is." Cole was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the road ahead. "Chester is a good man," he said finally. "He is 43 years old, never been married before. Lost his parents about 5 years back and has been running the ranch alone since then. He is quiet, keeps to himself mostly, but he is honest and hardworking. He will provide for you well enough." There was something in Cole's tone that made Willa turn to look at him fully. But what?" "There was a but in your voice. You said he is a good man, honest and hardworking, but something." Cole's jaw tightened slightly. "No, but Miss Sinclair, Chester is everything I said he is. You will have a good life with him." They rode in silence for a while, the sun beating down mercilessly. Willa pulled the bonnet Margaret had insisted she take lower over her face, trying to protect her skin from the burning rays. The landscape around them was unlike anything she had ever seen, harsh and beautiful at the same time, with mountains rising in the distance like purple shadows against the brilliant blue sky. "Why did you agree to come out here?" Cole asked suddenly. "A woman like you, educated, refined. You could have married someone in Philadelphia, surely." A woman like me had few options after my father died, Willa said, the words coming out more bitter than she intended. My father was a professor of literature at the university. We lived comfortably but not extravagantly. When he died last year, I discovered that his pension died with him. His second wife, my stepmother, whom he married when I was 16, made it clear that I was no longer welcome in the house. I had been teaching music to children to earn a small income, but it was not enough to support myself independently. When I saw Mr. Walsh's advertisement for a bride, it seemed like fate. He wanted an educated woman who could keep house and perhaps teach any future children. I wanted a home and a fresh start somewhere my father's death was not a constant shadow, so I answered his letter, and here I am. I am sorry about your father, Cole said quietly. That must have been hard. It was. He was a good man, if not always practical about finances. He loved books more than money, ideas more than security. I suppose I inherited that from him. Coming here is the most practical thing I have ever done, even if it feels like the greatest leap of faith imaginable. Seems to me that faith and practicality are not so far apart, Cole observed. Sometimes the practical choice requires the most faith. Willa smiled despite herself. That is almost poetic, Cole. Are you a philosopher as well as a rancher? Just a man who has learned that life does not always give you what you expect, but sometimes what you need instead. He glanced at her, and their eyes met for a brief moment before he looked back at the road. How old are you, if you do not mind my asking? 22. I will be 23 in October, and you? 28 last month. Been on my own since I was 17. What brought you to Arizona Territory? Cole's expression darkened slightly. I left home after my father, and I could not see eye to eye on some things. Worked as a cowhand for various ranches in Texas and New Mexico before saving enough to buy my own place here. It is not much, just a small spread with enough cattle to make a modest living, but it is mine. No one can tell me what to do with it or take it away. There was a story there, Willa sensed, something painful in his past that he was not ready to share. She understood that feeling. Everyone who came to the territories seemed to be running from something or towards something, often both at the same time. The road wound higher into the hills, and Willa began to see cattle grazing in the distance, their forms wavering in the heat haze. Cole pointed to a cluster of buildings nestled in a small valley ahead. That is Copper Creek Ranch, Chester's place. Mine is about 2 miles further west, smaller but similar layout. As they drew closer, Willa could make out a main house, a large barn, a couple of outbuildings, and a corral where several horses stood in the shade of a crude shelter. The house itself was built of adobe and wood, single-story with a covered porch running along the front. It was simple, rustic, nothing like the elegant townhouse in Philadelphia, but it looked solid and well-maintained. A man emerged from the barn as they pulled into the yard. He was shorter than Cole, with a stocky build running to thickness around the middle. His hair was brown threaded heavily with gray, and his face was lined and weathered from years in the sun. He wore dusty work clothes and boots that had seen hard use, and he walked with a slight limp as he approached the wagon. "You must be Miss Sinclair," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I am Chester Walsh. Sorry I could not meet you in town myself. Had a mare go colicky and I could not leave her until I knew she would pull through." "I understand," Willa said, accepting Cole's hand as he helped her down from the wagon. "Is the mare all right?" Chester looked mildly surprised by the question. "She is, yes. Seems to be improving. That was thoughtful of you to ask." An awkward silence fell. Chester stood several feet away, making no move to approach Willa more closely or take her hand in greeting. His eyes traveled over her in the borrowed dress, and she could not read his expression. "The stage had some trouble on the way," Cole said, breaking the silence. "Miss Sinclair's dress was torn in the incident. I took the liberty of getting her some practical clothes from Margaret's store. You can settle up with her next time you are in town." "That was good thinking," Chester said, nodding at Cole. "Thank you for bringing her out. Happy to help." Cole lifted Willa's trunk from the wagon and carried it toward the house. "Where do you want this?" "Just inside the door for now. I will figure out sleeping arrangements later." Willa felt a flutter of nervousness. Sleeping arrangements. Of course, that was a question that needed answering. She had assumed, based on Chester's letters, that they would have a period of courtship before marriage, time to get to know each other. But perhaps that was not how things worked out here. "Mr. Walsh," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know we have much to discuss and arrange. I hope that we can take some time to become acquainted before we make any formal arrangements. I believe that would be best for both of us." Chester's weathered face showed something that might have been relief. "That suits me fine, Miss Sinclair. I've got a spare room you can use for as long as you need. There is no rush on any of this. We will take it slow, see how we get along." "Thank you. That eases my mind considerably." Cole emerged from the house, his expression unreadable. "Well, I should be getting back to my own place. Got chores waiting." He turned to Willa, and his blue eyes held hers for a long moment. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Miss Sinclair. I hope you will be very happy here." "Thank you, Cole, for everything. Your kindness today meant more than you know." Something flickered in his eyes, gone too quickly to name. He nodded to Chester, climbed back onto the wagon and drove away, leaving Willa standing in the dusty yard with the man who might become her husband, feeling strangely bereft. "Let me show you around," Chester said, gesturing toward the house. "It is not fancy, but it is comfortable enough." The interior of the house was dim and cool after the blazing heat outside. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room combined, with a large fireplace on one wall and a wood-burning stove against another. The furniture was simple but sturdy, masculine without being unwelcoming. Everything was neat and orderly, almost obsessively so, as if Chester spent his evenings straightening and organizing rather than living. "There are 3 bedrooms," Chester explained, leading her down a short hallway. "This one here is mine. This one across the hall can be yours. The third one, at the end, I use for storage mostly, but it could be a nursery someday if things work out between us." Willa's bedroom was small but adequate, with a single bed covered by a faded quilt, a dresser, a washstand with a chipped basin and pitcher, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. Her trunk sat just inside the door where Cole had left it. "The privy is out back," Chester continued, his tone businesslike. "I've got a well with good water. We do laundry on Mondays usually. I have a woman from town, Mrs. Garcia, who comes twice a week to help with heavy cleaning and cooking, but I was hoping you could take over most of the household duties once you are settled. I will pay Mrs. Garcia through the end of the month to give you time to adjust." "That seems very reasonable," Willa said. "I am a capable cook and housekeeper. My father and I managed on our own for many years before he remarried." "Good. That is good." Chester stood awkwardly in the doorway, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "I imagine you are tired from your journey. I will leave you to rest and freshen up. There is water in the pitcher. Supper will be around 7 if you are hungry." "Thank you, Mr. Walsh." "Chester, please. We should use Christian names if we are considering marriage." "Then you must call me Willa." He nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Willa stood in the center of the small room, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hallway and then out of the house entirely. She moved to the window and watched as he walked back toward the barn, his gait still favoring his left leg. This was the man she had traveled 2,000 miles to meet, the man whose letters had been kind if impersonal, promising a home and security in exchange for companionship and domestic help. Looking at him, seeing the gray in his hair and the lines on his face, she tried to imagine building a life with him, sharing his bed, bearing his children. It was not an unpleasant thought exactly, just an abstract one, like imagining yourself in a story someone else had written. But when she closed her eyes, it was not Chester's weathered face she saw. It was a pair of blue eyes the color of summer sky and a voice saying, "You are beautiful just as you are." Willa shook her head sharply. That way lay foolishness and disappointment. Cole Whitmore was a kind man who had helped her when she needed it. Nothing more. He was Chester's neighbor and friend. Any romantic notions about him were not only impractical, but would be a betrayal of the commitment she had already made. She poured water into the basin and washed her face and hands, scrubbing away the dust of travel. Then she unpacked her trunk, hanging the few dresses she owned in the small wardrobe and placing her under things and stockings in the dresser drawers. Her books, precious few that she had been able to bring, she stacked on the windowsill where the light would be good for reading. Her mother's cameo brooch, the only jewelry she owned of any value, she tucked carefully into the back of the top drawer. When everything was arranged, she lay down on the bed, intending just to rest her eyes for a moment. But the long journey, the emotional turmoil of the day, and the exhaustion of weeks of anxiety finally caught up with her, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to the sound of voices outside her window. The light had changed, the harsh afternoon sun giving way to the gentler gold of early evening. She sat up, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. The voices continued, and she moved to the window. Chester stood in the yard talking to another man, this one younger and leaner, clearly one of the ranch hands. They were discussing something about fence repairs and moving cattle to a different pasture. Their voices were low and businesslike, the easy conversation of men who worked together regularly. Willa smoothed her dress, pinned her hair back more securely, and ventured out of her room. The house was empty, and she took the opportunity to explore more thoroughly. The kitchen was well stocked with basic provisions, beans and flour and coffee, cured meats hanging from hooks in the ceiling, and a few sad-looking vegetables in a basket on the counter. There was a water barrel by the back door and a good supply of firewood stacked neatly nearby. She decided to make herself useful and began preparing supper. She found salt pork and beans, some dried onions, and the makings of biscuits. It was simple fare, but it would be hot and filling. As she worked, her hands busy with familiar tasks, she felt some of her anxiety ease. This, at least, was something she knew how to do. She could cook and keep house, could create a home out of basic materials and hard work. Maybe that would be enough. Chester came in just as she was pulling the biscuits from the oven. He stopped in the doorway, surprise clear on his face. "You did not have to do that," he said. "I was planning to just fry up some bacon and beans." "I wanted to contribute something," Willa said. "After all your kindness in bringing me here, it seemed the least I could do. I hope you do not mind that I went through your provisions." "Mind. This is the best the house has smelled in years." He moved to the washstand by the back door and scrubbed his hands clean. "I am not much of a cook. I can make things edible, but that is about the extent of it." They sat down to eat at the simple wooden table, and for a while, the only sounds were the clink of utensils on plates and the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Willa searched for something to say, some way to bridge the awkward silence, but everything that came to mind seemed either too forward or too trivial. "This is very good," Chester finally said, gesturing at his plate. "You are a fine cook, Willa. Thank you. My father appreciated good food, so I learned early. Even when we had little money, I tried to make our meals pleasant. Tell me about him, your father. What did he teach at the university?" Willa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders as she began to talk about her father, about his love of literature and history, his terrible handwriting and worse sense of time, his ability to quote Shakespeare and Wordsworth at the drop of a hat. Chester listened, asking occasional questions, and she got the sense that he was genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation. "He sounds like he was a good man," Chester said when she finished. "I am sorry you lost him. So am I, every day." Willa took a breath. "What about your parents? You mentioned in your letters that they had passed." "Yes, 5 years ago. It was a fever that swept through the area. They both got sick within days of each other and were gone within a week. I had been helping my father run this ranch since I was a boy, so I knew how to keep it going after they were gone. But the house felt mighty empty for a long while. I am sorry. That must have been terribly hard. It was what it was. You learn to accept what you cannot change and keep moving forward. That is all you can do." After supper, Chester insisted on washing the dishes while Willa dried and put them away. It was a companionable kind of silence this time, easier than before. When the kitchen was clean, Chester showed her where the lamp oil was kept and how to secure the doors and windows at night. "We are pretty safe out here," he said. "I have 3 hands who stay in the bunkhouse and they keep an eye out, but it is good to be careful anyway. Arizona territory can be unpredictable." "I will remember that, thank you." They stood in the main room, the lamplight casting long shadows on the walls. Chester cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable again. "Willa, I want you to know that I meant what I said earlier. There is no pressure on you to make any quick decisions about marriage. I would like us to spend some time getting to know each other, make sure we are suited before we make any legal commitments. I know I am older than you, maybe more than you expected from my letters. I will understand if you decide this is not what you want after all. If that happens, I will pay for your passage back to Philadelphia or wherever you want to go." Willa felt a rush of gratitude for his honesty. "I appreciate that more than you know, Chester. And I want you to know that I came here with serious intentions. I am not looking for a way out, but I do think it is wise that we take time to become acquainted. Marriage is a serious commitment, and we both deserve to enter into it with our eyes open." "Fair enough. Well, I will let you get some rest. Tomorrow I will show you around the property properly, introduce you to the hands, and we can talk more about what your days might look like here." "That sounds good. Good night, Chester." "Good night, Willa." He retreated to his own room, and Willa stood alone in the dimly lit main room for a moment, letting the events of the day wash over her. She was here. She had actually done it, traveled across the country to meet a stranger who might become her husband. The reality of it felt enormous and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. As she prepared for bed, washing in the cold water from the pitcher and brushing out her long brown hair, her mind kept returning to those moments in Margaret's store. To Cole's eyes on her face when he said she was beautiful, to the warmth in his voice when he talked about helping neighbors, to the way her heart had jumped when their eyes met. But Cole Whitmore was not for her. She had made a commitment to Chester Walsh, and she would honor it. Cole was simply the first kind face she had encountered in this new place, and her reaction to him was just gratitude, nothing more. She repeated this to herself as she climbed into bed, as she pulled the faded quilt up to her chin, as she closed her eyes against the darkness. She almost believed it. The next week passed in a blur of activity as Willa settled into life at Copper Creek Ranch. Chester proved to be a patient teacher, showing her around the property, explaining the rhythms of ranch life, introducing her to the three ranch hands, Miguel, Tom, and young Johnny, who were polite but reserved around her. Mrs. Garcia, a kind woman in her 50s who had been helping Chester for 2 years, welcomed Willa warmly and taught her the particulars of cooking on the temperamental stove and managing water in the dry climate. Willa threw herself into her new responsibilities with determination. She took over most of the cooking and cleaning, organized the chaotic storage room, started a small kitchen garden near the house using seeds Mrs. Garcia gave her, and began mending the ranch's accumulated pile of torn clothing and worn linens. The work was hard and never-ending, but there was a satisfaction in it that she had never felt in her carefully orchestrated life in Philadelphia. Chester was kind to her in his reserved way. He thanked her for her efforts, complimented her cooking, and sometimes in the evenings would sit with her on the front porch and talk about the ranch, the territory, and his plans for the future. But there was no spark between them, no moments where their eyes met and held, no accidental touches that sent warmth flooding through her. It was pleasant and comfortable, like a pair of worn shoes that fit well enough but never felt quite right. And if Willa found herself scanning the horizon for a familiar wagon, for a tall figure in a worn hat, she told herself it was just curiosity about their nearest neighbor, nothing more. On the 8th day after her arrival, Cole Whitmore came riding up to the ranch in the late afternoon. Willa was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard voices in the yard and came around front to see Cole dismounting, his horse lathered with sweat. "What is wrong?" Chester was asking, his voice sharp with concern. "Fire broke out in my south pasture," Cole said, his face tight with worry. "Lightning strike, I think. I have been fighting it all day with my hands, but it is spreading toward the dry creek bed. If it jumps that, it could head straight for your northern boundary. I came to warn you and ask for help if you can spare it. Of course. Miguel, Tom, saddle up. Bring shovels and blankets. Johnny, you start wetting down our northern fence line just in case." Chester was already striding toward the barn, his limp more pronounced in his haste. "Willa, you might want to pack some food and water. We could be out there for hours." "I will do it right now." Willa rushed back into the house, her heart pounding. Fire was a constant danger in this dry climate, she had learned. It could spread with terrifying speed and consume everything in its path. She quickly packed bread, cheese, dried meat, and canteens of water into a sack. When she came back out, the men were mounted and ready to ride. Cole's eyes found hers across the yard. "Thank you for the help," he said to Chester, but he was looking at Willa. "I am sorry to pull you away from your evening." "That is what neighbors do," Chester replied, echoing the words Cole had said to Willa that first day. "We will get it under control, do not worry." They rode out in a cloud of dust, leaving Willa standing in the yard with Johnny, who was already hauling buckets of water from the well to soak the fence posts. She set down the sack she had prepared and picked up another bucket. "Let me help," she said. "Miss Willa, that is not necessary. You should stay in the house where it is safe." "Nonsense. Many hands make light work. Show me what to do." They worked together as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that were uncomfortably reminiscent of flames. Willa's arms ached from hauling water, her dress was soaked, and her hands were raw, but she kept working. If the fire did jump to Chester's land, she wanted to know she had done everything possible to prevent disaster. Full dark had fallen when the men finally returned, exhausted and blackened with soot and ash. Chester slid down from his horse with a groan, and Willa rushed to steady him. "Are you hurt?" "Just tired. We got it under control, but it was a close thing." Cole lost about 20 acres of grazing land, and his south fence is gone. Could have been much worse. Cole dismounted more slowly, and even in the dim light from the house windows, Willa could see the exhaustion etched into his face. He had a burn on his left forearm, angry and red, and his clothes were scorched in several places. "You are hurt," she said, moving toward him before she could think better of it. "That burn needs tending." "It is nothing," Cole said, his voice rough with smoke and fatigue. "I have had worse." "Maybe so, but it still needs cleaning and bandaging. Come inside." She expected him to argue, but he just nodded and followed her into the house. Chester and the other men headed for the bunkhouse to clean up, leaving Willa alone with Cole in the kitchen. She pumped fresh water into a basin, gathered clean cloths and the tin of salve she had seen in the cupboard, and turned to find Cole watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Sit," she said, gesturing to one of the chairs. He obeyed, sinking into the chair as if his legs might not hold him much longer. Willa pulled another chair close and took his arm gently, examining the burn in the lamp light. It was painful looking but not too deep, the skin red and blistered but not charred. "This is going to hurt," she warned him. "I figured." She carefully cleaned the burn with water, dabbing gently as Cole hissed between his teeth but did not pull away. His arm was corded with muscle, tanned dark by the sun, except where his shirt sleeves usually covered. She tried not to notice how solid and warm his skin felt under her fingertips, tried not to think about how close they were sitting, his knee almost touching hers. "How did you know to do this?" Cole asked, his voice quiet in the still room. "My father was terrible at taking care of himself. He was always burning himself on the stove or cutting himself on something in his study. I learned basic medical care out of necessity." She applied the salve carefully, then began wrapping the burn with clean cloth. "There. That should help it heal properly. Change the bandage every day and keep it clean. Thank you." He did not move his arm from her hands immediately, and she did not immediately let go. They sat there for a moment, her fingers gentle on his wrist, his eyes on her face. "Willa," he said, then stopped. "Yes. I want you to know something. When I saw your advertisement was answered when Chester told me he had found a mail-order bride, I was glad for him. He has been alone too long. He deserves some happiness, some companionship. But when I met you at Margaret's store, when I saw you standing there all courage and determination, despite everything that had happened, I realized something. I realized that Chester might not be the only one who was lonely." Willa's breath caught in her throat. "Cole, I do not think we should. I know. I know you are here for Chester, and I respect that. I am not trying to interfere or make trouble. I just wanted you to know that if things were different, if you had come here without any prior commitment, I would have asked if I could call on you. But I will not do that. I will not come between you and Chester. He is a good man, and you two have a chance at something real. I just wanted you to know, just once, that you are the most interesting woman I have met in years, and I will always be grateful that I was the one who got to meet you at that stage and tell you that you were beautiful." Willa felt tears prick her eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I am not good at hiding my feelings, and I did not want you to misunderstand if I stay away more than a neighbor should. It is not because you have done anything wrong or because I do not value Chester's friendship. It is because being around you and knowing you are not mine is harder than I expected it to be." He stood up, gently pulling his arm from her grasp. "Thank you for tending to this. I should get home. It has been a long day." "Cole, wait." Willa stood as well, her heart racing. "I need to tell you something too. When I came here, I expected to feel nothing more than polite friendliness toward Chester. I expected that affection would grow over time, that we would build a partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals. and maybe that will still happen. But what I did not expect was to meet someone who made me feel things I have never felt before, someone who could say a few simple words and change everything. That was not supposed to happen, and I do not know what to do about it. They stood facing each other across the small kitchen, the lamplight flickering between them, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy in the air. "What are you saying?" Cole asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am saying that I think about you far more than I should. That I look for you when I am outside. That when Chester talks about the future, I find myself wishing things were different. But I made a commitment, and I am not the kind of person who breaks her word. Chester has been kind to me, has offered me a home and a life when I had nothing. I owe him more than betrayal. So what do we do? I do not know. I truly do not know." They stood there in silence, the impossible situation stretching between them. Then Cole took a step back, putting distance between them. "You are right. You made a commitment and Chester trusts you. He trusts both of us. I will not be the man who ruins that." His jaw tightened with determination. "I will keep my distance. I will be a neighbor when needed, but nothing more. And you should give Chester a real chance. Get to know him without me around complicating your feelings. Maybe what you feel for me is just because I was the first friendly face you saw, like you thought. Maybe once you really know Chester, you will realize he is the right choice." "Maybe," Willa said, though her heart felt heavy as lead in her chest. Cole moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. "For what it is worth, Willa Sinclair, I think you are the bravest person I have ever met. Whatever happens, wherever life takes you, I hope you find happiness. You deserve that more than anyone I know." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Willa was alone in the kitchen with her tangled feelings and the impossible choice she had not known she would have to make. She sank into the chair Cole had vacated, her hands trembling. This was not supposed to happen. She had come here with such clear intentions, such practical goals. Find a husband, make a home, build a stable life. There was no room in that plan for romantic feelings that made her heart race and her breath catch. No room for a man with blue eyes and calloused hands who made her feel seen in a way she never had before. But there was also no room for selfishness and betrayal. Chester had paid for her passage, had opened his home to her, had offered her time to adjust with no pressure or demands. He had been nothing but honorable and kind. She could not repay that by pursuing feelings for another man, no matter how strong those feelings might be. The kitchen door opened and Chester came in, clean but still looking exhausted. "Did Cole get off all right?" "Yes. I tended to a burn on his arm and then he left." "That was kind of you. He is a good man, Cole, best neighbor I could ask for." Chester moved to the water barrel and dipped himself a drink. "I am going to turn in. It has been a hard day. Do not wait up on my account if you are tired too." "I think I will sit up a while longer. I am too wound up to sleep just yet." "That is understandable. It was frightening, thinking that fire might spread here, but we got it stopped. That is what matters." He paused at the hallway entrance. "Willa, I want to thank you for all you have done since you arrived. The house feels like a home again with you here. I had forgotten what that was like." "Thank you, Chester. That means a great deal." He disappeared down the hallway, and a few minutes later, Willa heard his bedroom door close. She sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, watching the lamp flame dance and flicker, trying to sort through the tangle of her feelings. She had to forget about Cole Whitmore, had to put those brief moments of connection out of her mind and focus on building a life with Chester. It was the right thing to do, the honorable thing. It was what she had come here to do, but knowing what was right did not make it any easier. And as she finally made her way to her own room, exhaustion pulling at her limbs, she allowed herself one moment of weakness. She let herself remember how Cole's voice had sounded when he called her brave, how his eyes had looked when he said she was beautiful, how his arm had felt under her careful fingers. Then she closed the door on those memories and promised herself she would not open it again. The days that followed were both easier and harder than Willa expected. Easier because Cole kept his word and stayed away. She did not see him around the ranch, did not catch glimpses of him riding the boundary between properties, did not have to navigate the complicated feelings his presence evoked. Harder because his absence was a constant presence, a gap in her days that she noticed far too often. She focused on Chester, on learning about him, on building the foundation of what might become a marriage. They ate meals together, worked side by side on ranch tasks, sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about everything from books to politics to their hopes for the future. Chester was intelligent and well-read despite his rough exterior, with strong opinions on territorial governance and the future of Arizona. He had a dry sense of humor that occasionally surprised her into laughter, and he was unfailingly courteous and respectful of her boundaries. But there was still no spark, no moments where her pulse quickened when he entered a room, no urge to find excuses to touch his hand or stand closer than necessary. They were building a friendship, perhaps, but Willa could not feel the stirrings of anything deeper. 3 weeks after the fire, Chester asked if they could talk after supper. Willa's stomach tightened with nervousness as she cleared the dishes and joined him on the porch. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and purple, and the air was finally cooling after another scorching day. "Willa, I have been thinking," Chester began, his hands clasped between his knees. "You have been here almost a month now. We have had time to get to know each other, to see how we get along. I think we do well together, do not you?" "I do," Willa said carefully. "You have been very kind, Chester. I would like to make our arrangement more formal. I would like to ask if you would agree to marry me." "Not immediately," he added quickly. "We could set a date for a month or two from now, give you more time to be certain. But I would like to know if you are willing to commit to this, to building a life together as man and wife." Willa looked out at the sunset, at the harsh, beautiful landscape that had become familiar over the past weeks. This was the moment she had been expecting, the natural progression of the arrangement they had made through their letters. Chester was offering her exactly what she had come here seeking: a home, security, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared goals. So why did she feel like crying? "May I have some time to think about it?" she asked. "Not because I am uncertain about you. You have been everything you promised to be and more, but marriage is such a serious commitment, and I want to be sure I am saying yes for the right reasons." Chester nodded slowly. "I can understand that. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you unless you choose to leave. There is no pressure." "Thank you. You are a good man, Chester Walsh, better than I expected." "That is maybe the saddest compliment I have ever received," he said with a wry smile. "But I will take it." That night, Willa lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wrestling with her conscience. Chester deserved an answer, deserved a wife who came to him wholehearted and eager to build a life together. But how could she do that when her heart kept pulling toward someone else? Someone she had spent only a handful of hours with, someone who had made it clear he would stay away out of respect for her commitment. She thought about what her life would be like as Chester's wife. Comfortable, stable, probably contentedly enough. He would treat her well, would never raise a hand to her or speak cruelly. They would manage the ranch together, would probably have children who would grow up with the fierce independence and resilience required by this harsh land. It was a good life, better than many women could hope for. But was a good enough life worth choosing when her heart yearned for something more? The question haunted her through the next week as she went about her daily tasks. She threw herself into her work with even more determination, as if by making the house perfect, she could somehow make her feelings fall into line with her sense of duty. She cleaned every corner, organized every cupboard, cooked elaborate meals, and stayed busy from dawn until she fell into exhausted sleep each night. Chester watched her with growing concern but said nothing, giving her the space he had promised. Mrs. Garcia, more perceptive, pulled Willa aside one day as they worked together in the kitchen. "What is troubling you, child?" the older woman asked gently. "I see you working yourself to the bone, but you look sadder every day." Willa's composure cracked, and before she could stop herself, the whole story came tumbling out. Meeting Cole, the way he had made her feel seen and valued, the impossible situation of having feelings for him while being committed to Chester, Cole's promise to stay away, Chester's proposal, her confusion about what to do. Mrs. Garcia listened without judgment, her weathered hands never stopping their work as Willa talked. When the younger woman finally fell silent, Mrs. Garcia sighed deeply. "Love is a complicated thing," she said. "Sometimes it comes when and how we expect it. Sometimes it surprises us, appears where we least look for it. The question you must ask yourself is this: what kind of woman do you want to be? The kind who keeps her word even when it is hard, who honors her commitments even when her heart pulls another direction? Or the kind who follows her heart regardless of the consequences, who takes what she wants even if it means breaking faith with someone who has been kind to you?" "I do not know," Willa whispered. "Both choices feel wrong somehow." "That is because there is no perfect answer, child. Every choice we make closes some doors and opens others. You must simply decide which doors you want to walk through and accept that you cannot have everything." "What would you do?" Mrs. Garcia smiled sadly. "I cannot tell you that. My life, my choices, they belong to me alone. Just as yours belong to you. But I will say this. Chester Walsh is a good man. He will give you a solid life, will care for you and any children you have. But I have been watching him for 2 years now, and I have never seen him look at anything the way I saw Cole Whitmore look at you the day of the fire when he rode in for help. Cole's eyes found you immediately, even in his panic about his land. That kind of feeling, it is rare. It does not come often in a lifetime. But I made a commitment to Chester. You made a commitment to consider marrying Chester. You did not stand before a preacher and speak vows. There is a difference, though I understand it may not feel that way to you." Willa pressed her hands to her face. "I need to talk to Chester. I need to be honest with him. He deserves that much." That evening, after supper, Willa asked Chester if they could talk again. They returned to the porch, to the same spot where he had proposed a week earlier. "I need to tell you something," Willa began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "And it will be hard to hear, but you have been honest with me and I owe you the same courtesy." Chester's expression grew guarded. "All right, I am listening. When I came here, I fully intended to marry you if we were suited. I had no expectations beyond finding a good man who would give me a home and a purpose. And you are a good man, Chester. You have been kinder and more patient than I had any right to expect. I hear about coming. But I find myself in a situation I never anticipated. I have developed feelings for someone else. Feelings I did not seek out, do not particularly want, and have done my best to ignore. But they are there, and I do not think they are going away. And I cannot in good conscience marry you while my heart is pulled toward another man. That would not be fair to you." Chester was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable in the fading light. "Cole Whitmore," he finally said. "It was not a question. How did you know?" "I have eyes, Willa. I saw how you looked at each other that first day, and I saw how you looked at him when he came for help with the fire. I have known Cole for 4 years. He is as honest a man as they come. If he has feelings for you, he has been fighting them out of loyalty to me." "He has stayed away," Willa said quickly. "He told me he would not interfere, and he has kept that promise. Neither of us has done anything inappropriate, but the feelings are there, and I do not know how to make them disappear." Chester stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, his hands gripping the railing. "I am 43 years old, Willa. I was not expecting a young, beautiful, educated woman to fall desperately in love with me. I hoped that affection might grow over time, that we might build something real based on companionship and shared purpose. But I did not expect passion. That is for younger people. Chester, I am so sorry. Do not be sorry. You cannot control your heart any more than I can." He turned to face her. "Here is what I think. I think you should go talk to Cole. Find out if what you are feeling is real or just some romantic notion brought on by his kindness when you arrived. Because if it is real, if he feels the same way you do, then you would be a fool to ignore it. And I do not want to be married to someone who settled for me when she could have had something more. But what about you? What about the commitment I made? I will be fine, Willa. I was alone before you came, and I can be alone again. It will not kill me. But marrying someone who loves another man, watching you go through life always wondering what might have been, that might kill both of us slowly." Willa felt tears slide down her cheeks. "You are being far kinder about this than I deserve. Maybe, or maybe I am being selfish in my own way. I do not want a wife who is with me out of obligation. I want someone who chooses me freely, who comes to me with a whole heart, not one divided between duty and desire. You cannot give me that right now. Maybe you never could have. I am so sorry, Chester. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know that. Life rarely goes the way we plan. The question is what we do about it." He moved back to where she sat and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go talk to Cole. Figure out what this thing between you really is. If it turns out to be nothing, if you find that I was right and you want to come back here and build a life with me, my offer still stands. But if it is something real, something worth having, then take it with my blessing. Life is too short and too hard out here to waste on half measures." "What if Cole does not feel the same way? What if I am making a fool of myself?" Chester smiled slightly. "Trust me, Willa. Cole feels the same way. I saw it on his face plain as day. The question is whether you two are brave enough to reach for what you want." The next morning, Willa borrowed one of Chester's horses and rode the 2 miles to Cole's ranch. Her heart hammered in her chest the entire way, her mind spinning with everything she wanted to say and all the ways this conversation could go wrong. Cole's spread was smaller than Chester's, as he had said, but well maintained. The house was a simple wood frame structure, painted white with blue trim, surrounded by a few scraggly trees that provided some shade. The barn was new-looking, and the corrals were in good repair. It spoke of a man who took pride in his property even if he did not have much. She saw Cole come out of the barn as she approached, shading his eyes against the morning sun. When he recognized her, he went very still, then walked slowly toward where she was dismounting. "Willa, is everything all right? Is Chester okay?" "Chester is fine. I came to talk to you." "I do not think that is a good idea. Cole, please, I need to say this." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, come inside. I will make some coffee." His house was neat and masculine, with simple furniture and few personal touches. But there were books on a shelf near the fireplace, and a good rug on the floor, and curtains on the windows that spoke of someone who had tried to make a home even in his solitude. They sat at his kitchen table, coffee between them that neither touched, and Willa forced herself to meet his eyes. "Chester asked me to marry him last week. He wanted to set a date, make our arrangement formal." Cole's expression went carefully blank. "I see. Congratulations." "I have not given him an answer yet. because I cannot say yes when all I think about is you. Willa, please, let me finish. I need to say this, and if I stop, I might lose my courage." She took a deep breath. "I came to Arizona Territory expecting to make a practical marriage, to find a good man who would provide for me, and in return, I would keep his house and bear his children, and we would build a comfortable life together. I did not expect to feel anything more than friendly affection. But then I met you, and you looked at me like I was someone worth seeing, not just a solution to a problem or a means to an end. You told me I was beautiful when I felt like a disaster. You talked about courage and community and faith in a way that made me believe in this new life I was trying to build, and I have not been able to stop thinking about you since." Cole's blue eyes were intense on hers. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I think I am falling in love with you, and I do not know what to do about it. I am saying that Chester is a good man who has done nothing wrong, but my heart is not his and probably never will be. I am saying that I talked to Chester last night, and he told me to come here, to find out if what I feel is real or just my imagination. So I am here, Cole. I am here asking if you meant what you said that night in Chester's kitchen, or if I am making a terrible fool of myself." Cole stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, Willa thought he was going to tell her to leave, that she had misunderstood everything. Then he was pulling her to her feet, his hands gentle on her arms, his face closer than it had ever been. "You are not making a fool of yourself," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been half in love with you since the moment I saw you standing in Margaret's store with your chin up and your eyes bright, despite everything that had happened. I stayed away because I thought it was the right thing to do, because Chester is my friend and you made a commitment to him. But if you are here, if you are saying what I think you are saying, then I need to know. Did Chester give you permission to come here, or are you just exploring your options?" "He told me to come. He said he does not want a wife who is with him out of obligation, who stays because she gave her word but wishes she had not. He said life is too short for half measures and I should find out if what I feel for you is real. And is it? Is it real? I do not know how it could be anything else. I barely know you, Cole. We have spent perhaps 10 hours together in total. It makes no logical sense that I should feel this way, but I do. And I do not know how to make it stop, or if I even want to." Cole's hands tightened on her arms, his thumbs tracing small circles that sent warmth spreading through her. "I do not want you to make it stop. I want you to stay here with me. I want to court you properly, to take you to town dances and church socials, to show you my ranch and tell you my plans for it. I want to sit on my porch with you in the evenings and learn everything there is to know about you. I want to kiss you until we are both breathless. And eventually, when we are both certain this is not just some romantic notion brought on by strange circumstances, I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life showing you every day that you made the right choice." "That is quite a list," Willa said, her voice trembling between laughter and tears. "It is an honest one, but I need you to be sure, Willa. If you choose me, you will be breaking faith with Chester, and that will be hard to live with even if he gave his permission. You will be choosing a smaller ranch, a younger man with less security to offer. My place is not as established as Chester's. Money will be tight for a while. I cannot give you as comfortable a life as he could. I do not care about that. I have been comfortable and miserable. I would rather be uncertain and happy. Then say yes. Say you will stay with me." "Yes," Willa whispered. "Yes, I will stay with you." Cole's smile was brilliant, transforming his sun-weathered face. He pulled her closer, and Willa thought he was going to kiss her right then. Instead, he rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her face. "I want to do this right," he said. I want to court you properly, give you time to be absolutely certain, but Willa Sinclair, you have no idea how hard it is not to kiss you right now. Then why do you not? Because when I finally kiss you, I want it to be when you are wearing a dress that is yours, not borrowed. When you are living in a house that is yours. When there is no question in anyone's mind, including your own, that you belong here with me. That is very noble of you. It is very difficult of me, but I am trying to be a gentleman. Willa laughed, the sound bright and free. You do not have to be that much of a gentleman. But Cole stepped back, putting distance between them even as his eyes devoured her face. Yes, I do, for both of our sakes. Now, let me take you back to Chester's place so you can gather your things. Then we need to figure out living arrangements until we can be properly married. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Cole rode back to Chester's ranch with Willa, and the two men talked privately for a few minutes while Willa waited nervously on the porch. When they emerged, Chester's face was resigned but not angry, and he shook Cole's hand with something that looked like genuine goodwill. Take care of her, Chester said. She deserves someone who will. I will. And Chester, I am sorry, I never meant, I know. Neither of you did. Sometimes things just happen the way they happen, hold no hard feelings. Chester turned to Willa. You are welcome to stay here until you and Cole can be married. I will not have people talking about you living alone with him beforehand. It is not proper. Thank you, Chester. That is very generous. It is practical. Besides, Mrs. Garcia will be here in the hands. You will have chaperones aplenty. He managed a slight smile. I do not want you ruined before you even get to the altar. So it was arranged. Willa would stay at Chester's ranch until she and Cole could be properly wed. Cole would come calling regularly, and they would have time to court properly, to build the foundation of their relationship in a respectable manner. It was strange and unconventional, but then, everything about this situation was. Over the next 6 weeks, Cole came to Chester's ranch almost every day. Sometimes he would arrive in the morning and help with ranch work, then stay for lunch and spend the afternoon with Willa. Other times he would come in the evening, and they would sit on the porch while Chester tactfully found reasons to be elsewhere, talking about everything and nothing until the stars came out. Cole told her about his childhood in Texas, about the father who had wanted him to be a lawyer or a banker, something respectable in town rather than a dirty cowhand. About running away at 17 after one fight too many, working his way west through a series of ranches, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. About finally saving enough to buy this small piece of Arizona, about the pride he felt in owning something that was truly his. Willa told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about her mother who had died when she was 10, about her father's gentle absent-mindedness and his deep love of literature, about her stepmother's coldness, about teaching music to children to earn pin money, about the desperate scramble after her father's death when she realized she had no real prospects and no one to help her. They talked about books they had both read, about politics and religion and the future of the West. They argued playfully about whether Wordsworth or Shelley was the better poet. They discussed the unfairness of laws that denied women property rights and the desperate need for better schools in the territory. They discovered they were both terrible at cards but enjoyed checkers, that they both preferred coffee to tea, that they both loved thunderstorms and hated the way dust got into everything. And slowly, carefully, they fell even more deeply in love. Cole was always proper in his behavior, never more than holding her hand or touching her shoulder. But the restraint cost him. Willa could see it in the way his jaw tightened when she stood close, in the way his eyes followed her movements, in the way his breathing changed when their fingers intertwined. She understood because she felt the same pull, the same desire for more than was proper before marriage. The town of Oatman took notice of the changed situation with various levels of interest and judgment. Some thought it romantic that Willa had followed her heart. Others thought it scandalous that she had broken faith with Chester. Margaret Foster at the general store was firmly in the romantic camp and delighted in helping Willa prepare for the wedding, selling her fabric for a new dress at cost and offering to help with the sewing. The minister at the small church, Reverend Thompson, agreed to marry them after a long conversation where he satisfied himself that this was not some impulsive decision but a genuine match. He set the date for the first Saturday in October, giving them almost exactly 2 months from the day Willa had arrived. As the wedding approached, Cole worked furiously to prepare the house for Willa's arrival. He painted the bedroom, built new shelves for her books, even put up new curtains that he admitted he had no talent for hanging but had tried his best. Chester, in a show of generosity that made Willa cry, gave them a wedding gift of a beautiful quilt his mother had made years before, saying he had no use for it and would rather see it go to a home where it would be appreciated. The night before the wedding, Willa lay in her borrowed room at Chester's ranch for the last time, too excited and nervous to sleep. Tomorrow she would marry Cole Whitmore, would become his wife, would begin the life she had not even known she wanted 2 months ago. It felt like a dream, impossible and wonderful and terrifying all at once. There was a soft knock on her door, and Chester's voice called quietly, "Willa, are you awake?" "Yes, come in." He entered, carrying a lamp, and sat down in the chair near the window. "I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow, to make sure you are certain about this." "I am certain, Chester, more certain than I have been about anything." "Good, that is good." He was quiet for a moment. "I will not lie and say it was easy watching you fall in love with Cole. There were moments when I was angry, when I felt cheated out of something I had thought was mine. But seeing you these past weeks, seeing how happy you are, how you light up when he arrives, I know I could never have given you that. You deserve that kind of love, Willa. You deserve someone who looks at you the way Cole does, like you hung the moon and stars. Thank you for understanding, and for being so kind about all of it. Another man might have made it much more difficult. What would be the point? Forcing you to honor a commitment when your heart was not in it would only have made us both miserable. This way, at least one of us gets to be happy." He smiled slightly. "Maybe someday I will find someone too. Not a mail-order bride next time, though. I think I will try meeting someone the old-fashioned way." "I hope you do, Chester. You are a good man and you deserve happiness too." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Cole is one of the best men I know, but if he ever does anything to hurt you, you come find me. Friend or not, I will knock sense into him." Willa laughed. "I will remember that. Good night, Chester, and thank you for everything." The wedding took place in the little church in Oatman at 10 o'clock on a beautiful October morning. The fierce heat of summer had broken, leaving the air cool and clear, the sky a brilliant blue that matched Cole's eyes. Willa wore a dress of soft cream-colored cotton that she and Margaret had sewn together, with tiny blue flowers embroidered around the collar. Her hair was pinned up with her mother's combs, and she carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that Miguel's wife had gathered that morning. Cole stood at the front of the church in a new suit that he clearly was not comfortable wearing, his dark hair neatly combed for once, his face bright with barely contained joy. Chester stood beside him as his best man, having insisted that he held no grudge and would be honored to stand up for them. Margaret served as Willa's matron of honor, beaming with vicarious happiness. The church was not full, but there was a respectable crowd. Some of the townspeople had come out of curiosity. others out of genuine goodwill. Mrs. Garcia was there with her husband, and the ranch hands from both spreads had cleaned up and attended. Even the crusty old proprietor of the saloon had shown up, claiming he wanted to see if young Whitmore would really go through with it. Reverend Thompson conducted a simple but heartfelt ceremony. When he asked if there were any objections, there was a long moment of silence where Willa half expected someone to stand up and protest this unconventional match. But no one did, and the Reverend smiled and continued. Cole Whitmore, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? I do, Cole said, his voice strong and clear, his eyes never leaving Willa's face. Willa Sinclair, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? I do, Willa said, her voice trembling with emotion but equally firm. Then, by the power vested in me by the Arizona Territory, I pronounce you man and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride. Cole's hands came up to frame Willa's face, gentle and reverent. He looked at her for a long moment, as if memorizing this instant, then leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise, the kiss she had been waiting for since that first day in Margaret's store when he had told her she was beautiful just as she was. The small congregation erupted in applause and cheers. When Cole and Willa finally pulled apart, both were smiling so wide it hurt, and Willa felt tears of pure happiness streaming down her face. They walked back down the aisle together as husband and wife, past smiling faces and well-wishers, out into the brilliant October sunshine. A wagon waited outside, decorated with ribbons and flowers by some of the town ladies, ready to take them back to their home. There was a small celebration at Margaret's store, with cake and punch and dancing to the music of a fiddle player who had been persuaded to perform. Chester danced with Willa once, a brief, friendly turn around the floor, and whispered in her ear, "Be happy. That is all I ever wanted for you." "I will be. Thank you, Chester, for everything." Then Cole was claiming her for another dance and another, until she was breathless and laughing and more exhausted and joyful than she had ever been in her life. As the sun began to set, Cole and Willa said their goodbyes and climbed into the decorated wagon. The drive back to their ranch, for it was theirs now, took on a dreamlike quality in the golden evening light. Cole held the reins with one hand and Willa's hand with the other, occasionally bringing her fingers to his lips to kiss them. "How did I get so lucky?" he mused aloud. 2 months ago I was alone, convinced I would spend my life as a bachelor. Now I have the most remarkable woman in the territory as my wife. "I think I am the lucky one," Willa countered. "I came here expecting to make a practical marriage of convenience. Instead, I found love. Real, true love. That is a rare gift. We both got lucky then. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." When they arrived at the house, Cole helped Willa down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" she laughed, "carrying my bride over the threshold." "It is traditional, or so I have heard." He carried her into their home, into the house that was now hers as much as his, and set her gently on her feet in the main room. The lamplight was soft and welcoming, and Willa looked around at the simple space with tears in her eyes. "It is perfect," she said, "absolutely perfect. It is small and rough compared to what you knew in Philadelphia. It is home, our home, that makes it perfect." Cole pulled her close, his arms encircling her waist, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you, Willa Whitmore." I know I told you that before, but now it is official. You are mine and I am yours, and I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice. I love you too, Cole. So much it frightens me sometimes. I never knew I could feel this way about anyone. Neither did I. But I am grateful every moment that you walked into my life, even if it was under the strangest of circumstances. He kissed her again, deeper this time, no longer constrained by propriety or the need to be a gentleman. Willa melted into him, her hands finding their way into his hair, her body pressed against his. All the restrained longing of the past 2 months poured into that kiss, all the waiting and wanting and wondering. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Cole took her hand and led her down the short hallway to their bedroom. The room he had prepared so carefully, with fresh paint and new curtains, and her books already arranged on the shelves he had built. The room where they would begin their married life together. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "A little," Willa admitted. "But mostly I am just happy. Happy to be here with you, happy to start this life together. Whatever comes, we will face it as husband and wife. That is all I need to hear." The months that followed were the happiest of Willa's life. She and Cole settled into the rhythms of ranch life together, learning each other's habits and quirks, figuring out how to work as a team. Willa threw herself into making the house a true home, sewing curtains and quilts, starting a larger garden, organizing and decorating until the simple structure reflected both of their personalities. Cole taught her to ride properly, not the side-saddle style she had learned in Philadelphia, but Western style, astride and free. She proved to be a natural, and soon she was riding out with him to check on cattle, to mend fences, to explore the boundaries of their property. She learned to rope and brand, to doctor sick animals, to read the weather and the land the way Cole did instinctively. They worked hard, rising before dawn and falling into bed exhausted each night. Money was tight, just as Cole had warned, especially as they worked to improve the ranch and build up their herd. But they were happy in their work, happy in each other, and the struggles brought them closer rather than driving them apart. Chester remained a good neighbor and friend. He came for supper once a month, and Cole helped him during roundup and branding season. There was no awkwardness between them, just a quiet understanding that they had all ended up where they were meant to be. Winter came to Arizona, cold nights and occasional snow that transformed the harsh landscape into something magical. Willa and Cole would sit by their fireplace on those long winter evenings, her reading aloud from her beloved books while he mended tack or cleaned his guns, contentment thick in the air between them. In January, Willa realized she was expecting a child. The news filled them both with a joy so profound it was almost frightening. Cole became even more protective, insisting she not overwork herself, taking on tasks he would normally have asked her help with. Willa bore his fussing with amused patience, understanding that it came from love even when it was excessive. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, the garden burst into green, and Willa's belly began to swell with visible evidence of the child she carried. She had never been happier or felt more at peace. This life, so different from anything she had imagined in Philadelphia, felt absolutely right. Their son was born on a warm day in September, almost exactly 1 year after Willa had arrived in Oatman. The birth was long and difficult, attended by Mrs. Garcia and the doctor from town, while Cole paced outside wearing a path in the dirt. But when it was over, Willa held a squalling, healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. "What should we name him?" Cole asked, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held his son for the first time. "What was your father's name?" Willa asked. Despite your differences, he was still your father, James Whitmore. Then we will call him James, Jamie for short. And perhaps someday, if you would like, you might reach out to your father, let him know he has a grandson." Cole looked at her with such love it took her breath away. "How did you get so wise?" "I just know what it is like to lose a parent. If there is a chance to mend that fence before it is too late, I think you should take it." Cole did eventually write to his father, a careful letter that was neither accusing nor apologetic, simply stating facts. His father wrote back 6 months later, a gruff letter that managed to convey regret without quite apologizing, and included a significant amount of money for his grandson. It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start, and Cole seemed lighter after receiving it. Baby Jamie grew into a sturdy, cheerful toddler who adored following his father around the ranch. When he was 2, Willa gave birth to a daughter, Rose, who had her mother's brown eyes and her father's determined spirit. 2 years after that came another son, Thomas, who was quieter than his siblings but just as loved. The ranch prospered slowly but surely. Cole's hard work and good judgment paid off, and they were able to expand their herd, improve their buildings, and even hire a couple of permanent hands. They never became wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable, secure, and most importantly, happy. Willa sometimes thought about that day she had arrived in Oatman, dusty and disheveled with her dress torn, expecting nothing more than a practical arrangement with a stranger. She thought about Cole's words in Margaret's store, words that had changed everything. "You are beautiful just as you are." Those words had been more than a compliment. They had been a recognition, an acceptance, a promise that she would be valued for who she truly was rather than who she was supposed to be. And Cole had spent every day since then keeping that promise. Years passed. The children grew. Jamie showed an interest in ranching and worked alongside his father from an early age. Rose proved to have a head for figures and began keeping the ranch books when she was just 12. Thomas developed a love of books inherited from his mother and talked about becoming a teacher someday. Chester eventually remarried, a widow from town named Helen who had 3 children of her own. The two families became close, with regular visits and shared celebrations. Whatever awkwardness might have existed was long since dissolved by time and genuine affection. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Willa by recreating their first meeting. He arranged for her to go into town, then accidentally intercepted her at Margaret's store, which was now run by Margaret's daughter since Margaret herself had passed away the year before. "Excuse me, miss," he said with exaggerated formality. "Are you perhaps looking for a cowboy named Cole Whitmore?" Willa played along, smiling at this man she loved even more now than she had on their wedding day. "I might be. Have you seen him?" "I have it on good authority that he is looking for you as well, and I am supposed to tell you something. He says you are beautiful just as you are." He always did know the right thing to say. Cole dropped the pretense and pulled her close, right there in the middle of the store, and kissed her thoroughly. 20 years, and I still cannot believe you chose me. 20 years, and I have never once regretted it." They rode back to the ranch together in the wagon, 48 and 42 years old now, weathered by sun and work and life, but still deeply in love. Their children would have supper waiting, would have decorated the house for the celebration, would tease them about being old and romantic. And it would be perfect, every moment of it, because they had built this life together. That evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set over the Arizona landscape they had made their own, Cole took Willa's hand. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had married Chester instead?" he asked. "Sometimes," Willa admitted. "I think I would have had a comfortable life. Chester was a good man, but I do not think I would have been truly happy, not the way I am with you. I think about that day you showed up at my door, telling me you could not marry Chester because you had feelings for me. That took remarkable courage, or remarkable foolishness. It could have gone very badly, but it did not. You followed your heart and everything worked out. That is the kind of woman you are, brave enough to reach for what you want, even when it is frightening. I learned that from you. You were the one who first saw that in me that day in Margaret's store. You told me I had courage before I even knew it myself. Their eldest son, Jamie, came out onto the porch, now a young man of 19, tall and strong like his father. Supper is ready. Rose says if you two do not come in soon, she is feeding your portions to the dog. Tell your sister we are coming, Cole said with a laugh, and that there is no dog. She says she will get one just to spite you if you do not hurry. Inside, the house was warm with lamp light and laughter. Their 3 children, nearly grown now, had prepared a feast and decorated the table with wildflowers. They ate and talked and teased, and Willa looked around at the faces of her family and felt her heart might burst with gratitude. This life was not what she had expected when she boarded that stagecoach in Philadelphia 20 years ago. It was harder, simpler, rougher around the edges. But it was hers, built with her own hands, with Cole's strength beside her, with love and determination and faith that things would work out. After supper, after the children had cleared away the dishes and retreated to give their parents privacy, Cole led Willa back outside. The stars were brilliant in the clear desert sky, countless diamonds scattered across black velvet. "I have something for you," Cole said. He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a heart. It was not expensive, but it was beautiful, clearly chosen with care. "Cole, it is lovely. Look inside the heart. I had it engraved." Willa tilted it to catch the lamp light from the window and read the tiny inscription, "Beautiful just as you are." She looked up at her husband, this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and loved her anyway, who had spent 2 decades proving every day that his words that first day were not just kindness but absolute truth. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." For 20 more years and 20 after that, and however many more God grants us. He fastened the necklace around her throat, his fingers gentle on the back of her neck. Then he turned her to face him and kissed her under the Arizona stars, the same stars that had watched them fall in love, that had witnessed their wedding, that had seen them build this life together. And Willa thought, not for the first time, that sometimes the best things in life come when you are brave enough to follow your heart, even when it leads you somewhere unexpected. She had come to this territory looking for security and found love instead. Had expected a practical arrangement and found a grand passion. Had thought she would have to settle for contentment, but had instead discovered joy. All because a cowboy with blue eyes and calloused hands had looked at a dusty, disheveled woman in a torn dress and seen something worth cherishing. Had told her she was beautiful just as she was, and had spent every day since then proving those words true. Years continued to pass. Jamie married a rancher's daughter from the next county over and took over more of the day-to-day operations of the ranch as Cole slowed down. Rose became a teacher in Oatman, though she helped with the ranch books on weekends. Thomas went east to university, studying literature like his grandfather, and sent long letters home full of ideas and observations. Cole and Willa grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies moving slower, but their love never diminishing. They were fixtures in Oatman, the couple who had defied convention and found happiness, whose story was told to newcomers as an example of how love could bloom in unexpected places. When Cole died at 74, peacefully in his sleep with Willa beside him, Half the territory came to his funeral. He had been respected as a rancher, valued as a neighbor, and loved as a friend. But most of all, he had been remembered as a man who had loved his wife with a devotion that was legendary. Willa lived another 5 years after Cole's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, never even considered it. She had had her great love, and that was enough for a lifetime. On a warm September day, exactly 50 years after she had first arrived in Oatman with a torn dress and uncertain future, Willa Whitmore passed away in her sleep. She was laid to rest beside Cole in the small cemetery outside town, under a stone that read simply, "Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother." Beautiful just as she was, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch house after the funeral, sharing stories and memories. Jamie told his children about the day he asked his father what made his mother so special, and Cole had said, "She had the courage to choose love over security, to reach for what she wanted even when it was frightening. That takes a remarkable woman." Rose shared how her mother had taught her that strength came in many forms, that running a ranch and keeping books and raising children were all equally valuable contributions, that a woman could be soft and strong at the same time, loving and determined, traditional and revolutionary. Thomas read from a letter he had found among his mother's things, written to her father shortly after her marriage. In it, she had written, "I came to Arizona Territory thinking I knew what I wanted. I have discovered instead what I needed. The difference between the two has made all the difference in my life." As the sun set over the Arizona landscape that Willa and Cole had loved so much, their family toasted to their memory. To a love that had started with a torn dress and a kind word, that had grown through hard work and shared dreams, that had lasted through decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle. To a cowboy who had seen beauty where others saw only disaster, who had offered kindness when it was needed most, who had loved consistently and completely for 50 years. To a woman who had been brave enough to follow her heart across 2,000 miles, and then brave enough to change course when that heart led her in an unexpected direction. To Willa and Cole Whitmore, whose love story became legend in the small mining town of Oatman, Arizona Territory, and whose descendants would carry their legacy forward for generations to come. The ranch continued, passed down through Jamie's line, with each generation adding their own chapter to the story. But they never forgot the foundation, the two people who had built something lasting out of faith and hard work and love, who had proven that sometimes the best things in life come not from careful planning, but from having the courage to embrace the unexpected. And every new bride who came to the ranch heard the story of that day in 1882, when Willa Sinclair arrived with a torn dress and an uncertain future, and a cowboy named Cole Whitmore looked at her and said, "You are beautiful just as you are." Those words, spoken in a moment of genuine kindness, had changed 2 lives forever, had created a family, built a legacy, and become a testament to the power of seeing people for who they truly are and loving them not despite their flaws and struggles, but because of the courage it takes to keep going anyway. That was the real lesson of Willa and Cole's story. Not that love conquers all, though theirs certainly had been strong. Not that following your heart always works out, though in their case it had. But that sometimes the most important thing you can do for another person is to really see them, to recognize their worth when they are at their lowest, and to offer them not pity but genuine admiration for their strength. Cole had given that gift to Willa on the day they met. And Willa had given it back to him 100-fold over 50 years of marriage, seeing in him not just a hard-working rancher but a man of depth and intelligence, and profound kindness. They had built each other up, had made each other better, had created something together that was greater than either could have achieved alone. And that was their true legacy, passed down through generations. Not just the ranch or the land or the family name, but the understanding that love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfectly suited to you, someone who sees your beauty even when you cannot see it yourself, someone who stands beside you through every challenge and celebrates every triumph as if it were their own. Willa Sinclair had come to Arizona territory in a torn dress, looking for security and a fresh start. She had found those things, yes. But she had also found something she had not even known to look for. A love that would define the rest of her life. A partner who would walk beside her through 50 years of joys and sorrows. And a home not just in the physical structure of a ranch house, but in the heart of a man who thought she was beautiful just as she was. And in the end, that made all the difference.